This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
Welcome to Couch Potatoes, episode 69. I'm Islaine, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ari.
Hey, peoples.
As we introduced a couple episodes ago, the concept of actually playing games, who knows if we're going to keep rolling with that title, but it's the best thing I got so far. We're moving forward with that. So, at the end of that last episode where we introduced the concept, we had chosen to play the game Secret Ponchos because it had just released, and Ari had a free key that she gave to me, so we were going to play that together, check it out, whatever. We did spend some time with that in the weeks since, and we have a few thoughts that we're going to share before we jump into what ends up being the actual meat and potatoes of this episode. Because, as everyone knows, something big happened in the past week in that Fallout 4 released, and both Ari and myself picked it up. So, we did play Secret Ponchos, but we don't feel that we had enough of a in-depth discussion there, so fuck that game. We're going to talk about Fallout 4 instead, because it's fantastic. So, we really didn't play anything else this week, so we're going to forego the normal talking about what we've been playing. We're just going to jump into a short little bit about Secret Ponchos, and then on to Fallout 4. So, Ari, what's your overall thoughts about Secret Ponchos?
I like the concept, like the whole top-down twin-stick shooter, Western dueling thing. That's pretty cool, but the execution just seems a bit lacking.
Yeah, I didn't like the controls. Like, either way, because initially I tried playing it with the controller, because I remember when it first released, it was early access on PC. I'm not sure if they were even calling it early access, but it released on, I'm not sure if both consoles or just the PS4, but I just kind of assumed that it was the type of game that would be best played on a controller, and it wasn't great. And then you had said, when I mentioned that using the keyboard and mouse was way easier, so I tried it that way, and I still didn't really care for it. There's just something about the controls that just didn't work. But I don't think it would work better if it was click to move either. I think the WA is...
No, definitely not. You need to aim. You need to aim your gun properly, and that's where the mouse comes in handy, like which way you're going to be shooting. But the actual controls and combos of your attack seems a lot easier with a controller. So we've got this weird system that doesn't work on either.
Yeah, it seems kind of like they were going for the MOBA thing, where in that you have a primary and a secondary weapon, and then you have several different things you can do with them, but the combo systems were just weird and wonky, and when we played against people, I mean, we had a couple decent rounds, and then other than that, we were just getting worked over and over again by people who had definitely put in more time with it, gotten used to the controls, I guess. But, yeah, I agree with you that the concept of the game is cool. I like the top-down view. I like the small little arenas where you have things to duck behind and you can jump around and whatnot. I think that they're missing... I mean, I've seen... Are there power-ups or not?
No, I don't think so. Maybe in another mode, but no.
Right, so that seems like something that's missing that could be added in to have some flair, or maybe even like health packs to kind of stretch out the matches.
I think the general mechanics work well. It's a dueling game, you know, it's a Wild West dueling thing, and that's the system they're going with, and that's what they did really well, but it's the execution of the controls and the actual skill use that seems off. Like, if you had bonuses and all that kind of stuff, it just end up being a Quake match, you know what I mean? But
I kind of like that
they want to
idea.
do something different. I don't. I like bonuses in certain games, and I don't like them in others. But this definitely suited that mode. It's just, I honestly think this was a fault of it going to early access so early. It needs population. It needs to balance matches better. It needs to actually find matches easier and just have better unranked stuff. And ranked stuff as well. But because they put it in early access so early, players playing then got bored with it. Now that it's released, you know, you've lost basically all that early access player base that, you know, couldn't find a match.
Yeah. That's the problem with any small budget or indie studio making a multiplayer only game, because granted it does have a single player mode, like an arcade, where it's almost the story is laughable. It's just like like Street Fighter. There's really no need for a story. It's just you go through the combatants and end and then done. And I mean that works, but the AI just sucks because I went into it thinking, okay, this is probably going to be challenging. It was really easy, and then going and playing against real people, it's a huge different degree of challenge.
You get your ass kicked.
Yeah. So you think you're pretty good at the game, and then you go play real people, and you get wrecked. So I don't know. It has a great concept, great basis. The graphics are good, or serviceable at least. The character ranges were good. I mean, there was a variety of different types of characters, and using different weapons that added, different variety to each match, how it will play out because of the, different combinations of skills. And I like the 2v2 rather than it being, huge match or just one-on-one, although I know you can play one-on-one if you want. Yeah, it's a good game for what it is, but having no population, it's not going to last.
No, it's not. Like, I don't know, it's a niche sort of game as it is, and you want to kind of focus that community around it. And they just didn't do it. And yeah, it's just because of the weird controls and a few other things, it just doesn't feel as intuitive, and that's what you kind of need from a PvP, multiplayer-only game.
Yeah. So, overall, I don't think I would recommend it to anyone unless it was someone that I know I could play with on a regular basis. Because if you could manage to get, 4 or 3 other people to play with, I'm sure it could be fun. But yeah.
Setting up your own private match would be pretty awesome, but yeah. It's very hit and miss with the actual community.
Yeah. If you don't know people that have it, it's not something that I would recommend picking up. So, moving on to the bigger portion of our discussion, we are going to do the same sort of thing, but for Fallout 4. And I'm sure a lot of you are playing it. We will try to keep it from being spoilery, but, we haven't really gotten too far into the game, story-wise anyway, so I don't think there's anything that we can spoil for you. We're just basically going to talk about the mechanics, and the various facets of the game that we enjoy, what we don't like, things like that. So, let's just start with character creation, because that's what everybody has to start with. What are your thoughts on the character creator?
I think it's pretty good. I like having the 2 people to kind of create.
I thought that was cool too, but then I thought that, the other person... Initially, I thought that both of those were going to be your parents, and you were going to play as the kid. That's because I probably didn't pay attention prior to actually playing the game. But, so I was thinking, you're making these 2 people, and then their combined features would make your kid. I don't know where I got that idea from, but that was my initial thought.
But that's how it is in a few other games where you create both people.
Yeah, so that was my thought first, but then because that wasn't it, it's actually you get to choose which character you actually are going to play, and then the other one subsequently gets killed off. Now, I'm sure that's spoilery, but pretty much everyone who knows anything about the game already knows that that's the basis of the story, so sorry if that ruined it for you, but I doubt it.
Anything that happens in the first 10 minutes isn't a spoiler.
Okay, good. I am saved. So, I went with the male just because I always end up usually playing the male character. I'm sure you probably went with a female, but I've noted many people that have written about the game already that are male have played the female, yada yada. Anyway.
Well, I do plan on making a male character eventually, but yeah, my first one's female. I'm going to make a male meathead that's like a melee warrior. With a big... Oh, no, you can't do the body. I want it like a giant gut. Oh, you can do a giant gut.
Yeah,
I'm so doing big fat guy.
I thought about doing that too, but then I went with just a stereotypical, just rugged-looking guy. No, I didn't go with anything that looks like me, per se, but I always make a guy that has, like, whatever hairdo and a beard, so that's what I rolled with. But then the disappointing part is, like I said, that between the 2, you create this other woman, or male, depending on which you're playing, and the other only lasts for how long? 5 minutes? And then they get killed off.
I think that's what the shock factor comes in, because you spend all this time creating your characters, like both of them. You use one of them, and then you see the other one get, like, killed right in front of you. Like, that's mean.
There's another point I want to make, but we're going to come back around to that in a little bit. Something that could potentially save that person from the death and also make it to where there's a point to actually customizing that secondary character, but we'll jump on that in a little bit. Otherwise, I think that the the models and everything, they look a little bit better, but it's still probably the weakest point graphically. Like the facial hair.
Fallout levels of Uncanny Valley at times.
Yeah, and the facial hair and the hairstyles don't look like, they kind of look tacked on.
That's kind of like the character of Fallout, though. Like, they could create a realistically looking game and model, but if you look at it, it's kind of got its own aesthetic. Like, a little bit cartoony in a way. Like, it's not like Borderlands level of cartoony, but it does have its own style that you can see evolve over the series.
Yeah, it's
and that
it's
goes
stylized.
into the characters as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you're saying with, like, it just looks like a plastic toupee pop on top.
Some of the hairstyles, yes. Some of them, no. Like, the women, because I went through all of the options on both sexes, and the women's hairstyles actually look worse than a lot of the male hairstyles. Now, like, if it's an afro, it looks horrible like a helmet. But if it's, like, a more modern haircut that a guy would have, it looks halfway decent. The female ones, like, I didn't really see any that looked good. Most of them look kind of shitty. Thankfully, most of the time you're running around with headgear on anyway, so you don't have to see that.
No way, I can't do it.
No? I'm wearing a gas mask, so you can't even see my character's face at all. And I don't really care.
I had that at the start too, but I kind of like my character, so I'm gone without a helmet.
The combat stats have to... it plays into it too much.
Screw the stats.
Well,
stats can be to hell.
That depends on if you're an RPer or a min-maxer, I guess. But yeah.
I'm neither. Damn it, it's my character. Shut the fuck up.
So, I mean, overall, I think that the character creator is pretty robust. I like the fact that you can, just sculpt the face how you want. And I actually saw a thread on, I think it was Kotaku, maybe. It was one of those sites, where they had actually just done the ugliest people that people have created. And then there were some horrible looking creations in there.
I like the more character-driven creations. Like, you've got the Joker ones, you've got... What's the guy that's wrestler? Bob Cena? I saw a Bob Ross character made as well. A happy little wasteland.
Yeah, I saw the John Cena one. And then somebody, I think it was Out of Beta, that mentioned it on Twitter and said he was surprised that he hadn't seen a Rick Grimes show up from Walking Dead yet. And I was like, dude, now I want to do that. So I didn't bother. I didn't make anything special. I just did a normal.
I was going to try and make like a Kill Bill inspired one. With a blade, of course.
Cool. Yeah, now that we're talking about it, I think of all kinds of different things that I would have made. But when I was actually doing it, it was just like I wanted to get through it to get to the game. But that's the cool thing, is that you can always just start over or start a new character or whatever. So it's too bad you can't change the voice or anything, though, because I hear that the voiceover for the female is kind of grating.
It's off in parts, but it's generally okay. But if you think about it, like, that would have added a huge amount of scope to the game, adding multiple different voices for everything in the game. It's not going to happen.
That's true.
It's either just have one voice or not have it voiced at all,
Yeah, that seemed to be a point of contention for some people, because some people liked it better in the older games in the series where the main character wasn't voiced, so that way they can just put their own inflection on what was being said. But now, there's the voiced inflection on everything.
I'm flexible to both. Like, I don't mind when it's silent, but I don't get into it as much as some. And even if a voice is a little bit off, I tend to just go with it.
I have to say that I like it better voiced. I think it just adds to it. And I mean, it does take away from it being you, but that doesn't really bother me. And I like the way that instead of zooming in absurdly close to people's faces during dialogue, it just kind of shows both of you. I like that better too. But those are just, stylistic choices. But overall, yeah, I think the character creation was solid. Moving on, next topic, story. Now, I've only completed one story mission. How many have you done?
None.
You haven't even done the first. Okay.
Oh no, I got into that main town. Like,
Did you meet?
I was going to say Coruscant, but that's Star Wars. What's it called? That first little area where you meet that Minuteman guy.
Okay, so you probably completed the first one, or at least
and you get into the power suit. Yeah, I wanted the power suit, damn it.
All right, so you experienced about the same amount of story as I did, and then you drop off the building and you can kill that fucking Deathclaw thing, and yeah, that was fun. Up to that point, that we were basically at the same spot. Storyline, seems about the same as previous ones. I did like how the opening sequence was actually before the bombs dropped, and then it shows you go through into the vault and become frozen, and then, yada yada from there. That was cool. To see the way the city looked before it got destroyed, and then to be able to come right back to it after you leave the vault, because it's not that far. You come right back out and get to see your same house destroyed, and your neighborhood and everything else. It gives a before and after that they haven't done in the past.
Yeah, didn't really care. I get the reason why they did it, but I was like, whatever. I'm not attached to the prettier version before the apocalypse anyway.
Oh, I'm not either. I just thought it was cool to see. And then, because the last one they did the whole you grow up as a baby in the vault and grow into adulthood and whatever and then leave. So, they figured out a different way to do it. That's cool. At least it wasn't, repetitive. And it still keeps within the scope of what we know of as Fallout, being a nuclear apocalypse and all of that.
I feel like it's kind of a better character for the game, too. I don't really like the New Vegas person, complete blank slate kind of brain damage guy. This feels more apt with what it is, you know what I mean? Yet you're still able to create your own sort of, story around them. This feels like a better driving force behind it, I guess.
Yeah, there's more motive for you to be doing what you're doing. And the New Vegas discrepancy is probably because it was Obsidian that made it, not Bethesda. That's all I can think of. Either way, I do like the more just give me a backstory and let me create my own character. It's more immersive that way. But the whole sense of urgency to find your son is gone as soon as you leave the vault. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about him. I hope he's okay, because I'm busy harvesting shit and crafting and whatnot. So.
Yeah, but in reality, it's not that much of a driving force anyway. It's not an urgency because you don't know how long you've been asleep for. You know what I mean? You don't know how old your kid is, where he is, what he is, or if he's dead or not. If he was just stolen and then you're trying to run after him, sure, maybe that urgency would be stronger. Or if you knew where he was and all that kind of stuff. But at the moment, it's just getting kind of just random clues off people, very vague cues at that. It's really not that meaningful in and of itself. You can place as much importance on it as you want to. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and if you choose, you can follow the story to its conclusion right from the get-go. And then you would actually have that sense of urgency the whole time. It was people were just criticizing that because it was once you get out there, you don't give a shit. But, that tends to happen with lots of games.
Yeah, any open world game suffers from that. I was playing The Witcher, and there's that huge story about, getting to see Ciri quickly and because she's got the wild hunt chasing her and all that kind of stuff. And then I spent 20 hours fucking around in that first area,
Right.
That seems even less, that seems even kind of a worse story approach, or those whole fate of the world is depending on you stories. Yet go make me an axe, please, or go kill a couple of rats for me. This is oh yeah, your kid may or may not be out there, and I don't know if I know something or not, but can you just do this for me first, and then I'll give you information. That kind of sets the world, it's a very self-centered world. You do something for me, and then I'll do something for you. You know what I mean?
Well, not to mention
that's what the world is.
Not to mention the fact that if you did come out of a vault and that same scenario happened to you, you would be so disoriented because of the changes in the world and the way things are 200 years later. You'd be so disoriented that it would be tough to focus on finding your kid anyway. You would be doing other things trying to establish
you don't know landmarks,
you
don't know people. Yeah, you want to establish a place, you want to establish maybe friends, enemies, whichever.
Right, and then eventually you'll either find your son or not. We don't know because we haven't played that far in the story, so...
screw the story. I'm an adventurer.
Well, I did want to touch on, parts of the story that are not the main story, but still part of your own personal journey. And I think that's why these types of games are great, because you're not necessarily following the story that's prescribed. You may eventually get to that point, but you get to do it in whichever way that you want. So there's tons of side quests, miscellaneous objectives, there's the crafting and the other systems. All of that kind of comes into play into making your version of the Fallout story. So, I've played through quite a few of the Minutemen missions. I've met the Brotherhood of Steel. I've done half a dozen other little miscellaneous odds and ends, and I feel that cumulatively, the storyline, even the stuff that you pick up off of terminals in various locations, just the little tidbits of story that are dropped about here and there, makes for a really good experience. I mean, it tickles your explorer side. There's your achievement side for finding like all the bobbleheads and things like that. I mean, it has the combat that keeps it grounded. There's just a lot of good there that comes together to make a really great story.
The only bandits I met were like these drug mules, basically. They were going around selling drugs. That was their job. They were on the road somewhere, and then I killed them and took all their stuff because they're drug dealers.
Well, there you go. You're the narc.
Well, first
of the
I
wasteland.
sold them. I sold them a heap of stuff first because I don't know why, and then I robbed them and killed them.
That sounds.
What I do.
That sounds fitting.
Oh no, there were some farmers, and I stole all their plants.
Yeah, I've stolen some plants too, but just to make my own plants in my own place. So next talking point, the factions. Have you interacted with any of them besides like the Minutemen?
Literally in all my time, I've just been picking a direction and going that way, and then killing everything in my path. That's what I've been doing.
So you haven't done many quests at all then?
You know? I don't know. This is how I go about open world games. I just start wandering around. If there's a quest objective that I come across, yeah, I'm going to complete it. But if it's I'm not going to go out of my way to see stuff or just follow my direction. And I don't know, I find all these really cool bases. I found a mole rat hole, and I went in and found some cool stuff and fought a legendary. And then I found this giant bandit base underground and fought that and killed another legendary. Then I found this caravan park that was overrun with ghouls, plus a glowing ghoul legendary. And then there was these murloc things that came out of the ground and started attacking me. And a bear came along and saved my ass, and I ran away. That's how I play.
Well, I have done the same thing, but when I've come across quests that were, a short distance away to complete, I would, purposely head that direction. And I hit all the major landmarks along the way wherever I'm going. So it's okay, there's a quest that's way over there. I'm going to head that direction and just do everything that I can in between. Sometimes that means getting sidetracked by other quests. Sometimes it's harvesting. Sometimes it's just killing shit. I've come across plenty of those legendaries and stuff. But the Minutemen faction tends to turn the whole base building thing into a mini game. So the quests aren't really story based. It's more just go clear out this settlement, and then you establish radio towers and set them up to where other people will come to those settlements. So just like your main hub, you'll now have multiple settlements with multiple people, and they all have their food and shelter and water and defense needs. And then you actually have to go to each one individually and build up different structures and stuff for them. So that gets kind of overwhelming after a while, so I kind of stopped doing them. But through just various things, picking up radio signals and whatever, you'll pick up all kinds of different side quests that'll take you in all different directions. And I still probably have only covered 30% of the map, maybe, if that. And that's not every point in between. Sometimes I do the fast traveling. So let's talk about mechanics. How do you feel about VATS and the combat now?
VATS is still VATS, you know what I mean? Sometimes you'll have this awesome hit chance, and then it'll just miss every single shot. And you're well, I could have just shot them better myself. Fuck you. But I really like how they've now slowed the time of it. It's not just this immediate standstill, make your decisions, then execute them kind of stuff. It's everything's happening behind you, just in a slower time, so it makes everything a lot more urgent. You've got this legendary freaking mosquito coming at you, and the next hit's going to kill you. So you're frantically trying to make this VATS shot, and it's getting closer and closer and closer. That shit scares you. It's scary. That's good tension.
Yeah, I like
those
that.
Suicide bombers that are carrying a friggin' nuke, what the hell? Do they realize how insane that is?
Yeah, that pissed me off the first couple times I blew them up, and I was standing too close and got blown up too. Those are insane. Yeah, I agree. I think the first-person shooter mechanics are vastly improved because I can actually play it without VATS whatsoever and still be effective.
Yeah, exactly. It's really smooth now, like an actual FPS.
And people are talking shit on that, saying that it's not, and I don't understand where that's coming from unless you compare it to Battlefield or Call of Duty, which would be the only way it could be any smoother.
I think people are off on it because the actual how dead on you shoot with your aim, the iron sights, depends on your perception, I think. And also it's not like it's not like the whole COD where you're your little iron sight top of that is exactly where it's going to hit. You know what I mean? It has recoil and it takes that into account. And it's also a little bit up from there. Sometimes on certain weapons, it might be a little bit down on other weapons. Like each individual has its own character and how it shoots. Like I've been shooting a lot with a lot of weapons. I've kind of noticed that, and I kind of know now whereabouts I'm supposed to aim certain weapons to get that better shot.
Yeah, I think anybody who's a first-person shooter veteran should be able to pick up on those nuances between guns, and I think that they kind of turn the RNG down on it though, to the point where, I mean, perception may affect how accurate you are with your gun, because there are times where I'm shooting directly at them where I think.
Well, I'm not sure because I haven't had a low perception character yet, so I can't be sure.
Yeah, I haven't either. I put, I think, 6 points into that to begin with, and have it up to like 9 already at this point. So, but that's because I knew I was going to be trying to run and gun and do that type of thing. But it just feels like a tool now, rather than being a requirement. And I like that, because I can choose to use it. And then the good thing, too, is that when you're not in VATS, the only thing that affects your AP that I've noticed so far is just running, or sprinting. And then if you're in VATS, it's whatever, bullets you're shooting, or however many shots you can take. So you can go into VATS, shoot off 3 to 6 rounds, depending on what you're using. Maybe more than that, depending on other stats and whatever. But you shoot off a few times, and then you come out of VATS, and you can finish off the enemy manually. Or vice versa, soften them up and then finish them off of VATS. So it's more of a tool than a requirement, and I enjoy that a lot more.
No, yeah, definitely.
How about crafting? Have you done much of that?
Yes.
Like upgrading your weapons or making medicines and armor, the power suit station.
I just wish there was an easier way to send materials back to your base.
Apparently
it just ends up that... you can link up to workshops and that kind of stuff, yeah. But you still have to get to a workshop to put it in there and dismantle ingredients. Like, I just feel like that whole process could be streamlined a bit better.
Yeah.
Like, I like the customization there, and I like being able to craft different components. And even that everything in the Wasteland is now useful in a way. But
that is a huge issue.
It just needs to be streamlined. Like, I don't know, some things should just be marked junk and immediately just scrapped, you know what I mean? If there's a recipe that needs, like, Wonder Glue, that's not going to be scrapped. If there's a recipe that needs this, it won't be scrapped. But anything else that's just there for components should just be automatically scrapped when it gets in your inventory.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, they do have the function where you go to the workshop bench and hit transfer, and then you can transfer all junk. But then I've noticed that's only for that particular settlement. If you're at a different settlement and you go to that workshop, it will only contain what's in it from that settlement. So you actually have to manually transfer yourself, unless you do the supply lines, which is what the perk does.
The trade perk, yeah.
But that's based off charisma, and everything I had read prior to playing the game said that charisma wasn't that necessary anymore. Making a high charisma character wasn't as viable anymore because there's hardly any dialogue choices.
Well, it's not necessary. It just makes it's a quality of life improvement. You know what I mean? You can still go back and forth and like just go through the loading screen to get everything back if you really want to. You know what I mean? It just streamlines it.
Right. But that seems like something that almost everyone would want to have. And being
that entire process just needed to be streamlined and polished up. It's too complicated for the sake of being complicated.
But for whatever reason, I still like it.
Oh, I like it too, and I even like the base building aspect of it. That got me hooked for a little while as well, like junking lots of stuff, building new reinforced houses for people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be something I wasn't going to care for at all, because typically I don't like crafting or base building. But in the case of this game, crafting has been very useful, and base building had its perks as well. But again, the whole mini game of having a bunch of different settlements and having to take care of all of them could become kind of a headache after a while, I think.
Yeah, they've already said just focus on one settlement.
But then the missions actually send you to go recruit more settlements and make bigger things, because eventually with the Minutemen you get a flare gun.
They say focus, you know what I mean? You can still make multiples, but just make one huge, you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, that's what I did with my main base, but you still have to address the needs of all of those other little mini camps. So if they don't have defenses, you need to build them defenses and things like that. Because supposedly raiders are supposed to attack them at some point in time, and that's why you put the defenses there, but I haven't seen it happen yet. But I do know that
I think once it gets to a certain size, then they start getting attacked. Like they don't worry about them at the start. Yeah.
Like I said, I haven't seen it happen, but I assume if it did happen, you would get some sort of notification and then have to go back there and defend it. But I'm not sure. So that's crafting, combat, base building. We like those, mostly. What about sidekicks? Have you noticed that the AI seems a little bit better than it was in the past? I kind of feel that way.
You're kidding, right?
I said a little
it's
bit.
just as good as it usually is in like Bethesda games, which is to say not great. Like the funniest thing I had when I was just out of the vault, I'd got the dog. Well, I actually went and got the dog first, which is weird, and then came back to that first town. And then after getting there, the dog just started digging into the underground. I was like, "What is it, Lassie? Timmy trapped in a well." It just disappeared, and then I never saw it again until I restarted the game.
Okay.
It was my first bug with the AI, and I've seen quite a few other things where NPCs will just get stuck in places.
Yeah,
I had
that.
a legendary mob that was actually going to be quite terrifying to defeat, just get stuck on a lamppost, and I just whittled him down to his dead. And just other stuff like that, pathing is pretty bad. Glitches with enemy movements are kind of funny as well. So it's not great.
Well, when it comes to the sidekicks, I've seen a couple times where they've gotten stuck on stuff. But for the most part, I mean, they will actually be stealthy when you're stealthy. They don't tend to aggro everything as much as it seemed like they did in Skyrim.
Being stealthy when you're stealthy is just them appropriating your stance. It's not anything to do with their own
Right,
power.
but in Skyrim, when I would do that, the other character would never... They would always just run off and start aggroing shit anyway. And so it would break my stealth almost every time. But it actually works a little bit better now. That's just a minor improvement. I think the sidekicks, there's been a variety of them that I found that I could take with me. They seem, appropriately different, have their own pluses and minuses, and have their own personalities.
I really want this epic robot I saw, but I need to get that whole, be able to give robots commands skill. But that's level 40 skill.
Something like that, yeah.
He was awesome robot, and I was like, what does it do? And I just started shooting it. And then he killed me in one hit. And I was like, damn.
Yeah, there's some horrible robots that you might find at some point. I won't spoil it, but...
Well, I've got the skill to sneak up and shut them down or make them explode. So that helps. But I wanted the robot for my minion. I want minions!
In the case of the one that I'm talking about, you wouldn't be able to do that. Because you actually have to talk to him. And then if you don't have something that he wants you to have, he will kill you. And almost instantly, it's horrible. And it was something that I was I kept trying to figure out a way around, and I kept trying and trying and trying, and just died over and over again to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to come back here when I'm more powerful, or have the thing that he wants. So how about levels and the progression? I mean, do you think that the perk system, I know some people were saying that it seems dumbed down from previous entries. I think that it's kind of good that they kind of focus some things. Because,
a lot of the same stuff was in the previous games. It's just done in a different format now.
Yeah. Well, I think, too, that, didn't they used to have it split where, you had to have certain perks for energy weapons and certain perks for bullet weapons, and now they're just combined into one, their pistols or their rifles or whatever?
No, there's still a few there for, energy weapons and stuff. I noticed one specifically for radiation weapons as well.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are some that are, some that aren't. It seems like some things have been combined, though. And it seems like there are a variety of ways to build your character. I just tend to...
I do feel like there's less customization with your characters now. The last system had a lot more, I guess, niche skills to choose from to build your character, whereas this is more of a broader approach to building your character. More basic abilities, I should say. Oh, here's your 25% extra damage. Whereas before it's here's your, extra perception or something like that for shooting this kind of weapon.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would have to look at the older...
I like it. I still like it.
But I think it's streamlined. It's good. All the choices seem like they would have a use.
It's a different type of progression too.
niche.
Before, it wasn't... I don't think they were locked to your special, were they? It's just every level you got a couple to choose from.
I think some. I think some were. I think some were attached because I remember needing a certain amount of strength to do certain things or whatever, as far as perks go. And that seems to be the case now. But I like the fact that you can just put in, 6 points into perception. You can go 6 slots down, and you can automatically open that without having to open stuff above it. Which I know that's basically the same way it's always been. But they put it in a tree format, sort of. So it's like each item in the special goes straight down. Those are the abilities for that tree, sort of thing. And because it's set up more like an MMO or something else that I'm more used to looking with skill trees, it feels like it works. And every tree has its own purpose. As far as leveling up goes, you don't get very much experience for killing things, but you could technically just level up by going around killing things, I guess.
You get a decent amount from legendary stuff.
Yeah.
Red, like skull. Like, there's different types of mobs. So your basic
elites.
ones, then there's like the elite skull ones, and then there's like legendary, and then there's like an extra, more powerful legendary.
Right. And then you get some experience from discovering points, and then the majority comes from quests.
And also from clearing points as well. If you kill every mob in an area, it gets cleared.
Yeah.
And that gets you a decent bit of experience, so yeah.
Yeah, so you're not forced to take quests.
But I think they've really balanced it a lot better now. Like, you get points for sneaking effectively, you get points for hacking, decent amount of points for hacking, you get decent amount of points for crafting as well. Lockpicking gives you a lot. Like before, I think, like in New Vegas, it felt like the only real way was to do, like, quests to shoot stuff to go about. Now it's like you pick a playstyle, and that playstyle can get you a lot of experience.
Yeah, and then eventually, if you were to just go wander around the map and kill stuff for a long time and just get all the discovery experience and clearing experience and stuff like that, you could eventually be a decent level before you even bothered with the storyline, and then you could just rush through it if you wanted to at that point. So yeah, it supports various playstyles, and that's cool.
There doesn't seem to be level scaling either for mobs, does there? They are just what they are.
Yeah, it seems that way, because once you've killed, you've gone up a few levels and you go and kill a rad roach, it doesn't give much. It seems like it's just the same old, 6 experience, but you can one-shot it now.
Yep, it definitely takes more experience to level up. I mean, it just means, like, mobs don't get more powerful depending on what your level is, like the Skyrim approach. Right. I don't like that approach.
You think it should scale?
No, I don't like the approach of scaling. I don't like it.
Oh,
I like this kind of world where you can get in over your head at times, but you also can gain more powerful, so earlier stuff is easier to get through.
Right.
It just gives you that better sense of progression, like, I'm getting more powerful, stronger, faster.
Yeah, and it makes it seem like, the early areas near you are kind of like safe zones after a while. Okay, so what are some things that you can think of that you might want in the game?
Vehicles.
I disagree with that. I like it without. I don't think the world's big enough for mounts, because you can fast travel. It's not.
I kind of agree, but I like traveling, like properly traveling, and I really enjoyed, like there was a vehicle mod for New Vegas. I think there wasn't there?
Not sure.
I haven't played it for so long. I'm pretty sure I played, or it might have been on 3. I don't know. But it just made, like, traveling around so much cooler. Like, just hop on my motorbike and start riding around faster. And it was just cool. I kind of want that. Like, yes, you can make serviceable vehicles hard to find. You know what I mean? Ones that you can actually build up. You can make parts rare if you really want to. You can make them degrade as well, so you can't just have this ultimate vehicle to drive around in. But, make it kind of like the power armor, where sometimes you just want to use it to get somewhere quickly or nicely, or just explore,
I could see doing something like maybe a little jetpack, but not like...
Well, there is already a jetpack for your power armor, but I just mean right. like a motorbike that I can drive around in. I think that would be cool.
Maybe even a horse, because Skyrim had horses. Something like that, I guess, would be okay. But
there are 2-headed deer. I'll try to strap on one of those.
Well, something that I really would like, because there's been lots of times where I'm like, oh, that's a really pretty environment shot that I'd like to take. And there is no hide UI button. I would pay money for that at this point. Because to do it now, you have to manually go into the settings, go find the UI opacity, and then change it all the way down to nothing, then exit all the way out, take your screenshot, then go all the way back in and put it back on. It is a pain in the ass. And with the amount of screenshots that I would like to be taking, yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like, I would give anything for that. It drives me crazy.
A few of the other ones you could, like, actually edit in a button into the ini files. So I'm guessing there might be that kind of functionality.
I'll have to do some research and see if I can find something to do that, because that's annoying. The other thing that I said I was going to touch on earlier when we were talking about character creation was, like, how is it that this hasn't become like a thing where there could be an optional co-op mode? I mean, you could very easily change from the character creation. I mean, you're both creating your characters. You don't have to be husband and wife. They could change it ever so slightly. And the same thing goes for when you see your significant other get shot and the baby taken. It could just as easily be a second player just doesn't get shot, gets knocked out instead, then wakes up, defrosts you, lets you out, and you go about your business. Same exact thing, but, you could actually have co-op right from the beginning. And if you can have a sidekick throughout most of the game, why can't you just have a buddy play it instead?
That would be cool. I have to admit, I would want that in an instant. Like, it's just a lot funner to, like, explore together.
Yeah.
And it'd still be a challenge, because some of those areas and mobs and everything can kick your ass.
I mean, they could tune it just to make it a little more difficult.
They could if they wanted to. I don't even think they need to do that. Like, it's just you and your buddy going around the world. Like, if it's a bit easier, so what? Like,
yeah, exactly.
What does that really affect? And then they've also got the difficulty modes that you could just go up. Like, you don't have to play normal with your friend. You could both play the harder setting,
Right.
And make it extra hard. Like, they've already got those difficulty settings there.
Yeah.
I would love that. I don't know why they don't do it in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, almost every game's got co-op these days, so... And they've had other open-world games. I mean, one that comes to mind is, like, Dead Island. It's co-op. You go through the whole game, first-person mode. It's open world. You do quests and shit. The same exact thing. Like, I don't see why you couldn't have that. Now, I would only want it to be optional, not forced, But you could play. So you can play the game now as is with AI companions, or you could play with co-op. I mean, it just seems so doable, and it's such a better idea than ESO was, because ESO was just an MMO with Elder Scrolls painted over the top of it. This would be, a single player or co-op game from the get-go. It would be designed for that. Like, it's a no-brainer. I don't know why they haven't done it. It needs to happen. So, you mentioned a couple bugs that you saw. Are there any others? I mean, have you had any issues with crashing?
I have had a couple of crashes, yeah. More related to, like, alt-tabbing and stuff like that.
Yeah, same. Another bug that I've noticed is sometimes, because the default key on the keyboard is tab to open up your Pip-Boy, I would notice sometimes I would open it up and do a couple things in there and then be hitting tab to close it, and it wouldn't close unless I alt-tabbed out and alt-tabbed back in.
The mouse can be quite funny in different modes as well, like when you're in a crafting interface or you're, repairing mode on your suit. Like, it doesn't seem as, I don't know, like the mouse isn't going where it should or clicking where it should.
Yeah, it's a little.
And then I've also a few
too.
polished things where you're actually in your building mode trying to command people around, and you can click something like, oh yeah, confirm, go here, and it won't display for a long time. Yet if you click again, it'll cancel it. So there's quite a few little bugs there, and I've noticed some real, like, spots out in the world where your system will chug, and I mean seriously chug, especially when the fog comes out.
I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, there's a few spots. And it's funny, like, it performs so well when there's lots of enemies. Like, I've been in this, like, rebel base with, like, power armor guys coming at me and dogs running at me and shit like that. Beautiful. I go into this one swamp area. But it's like walking on quicksand, you know what I mean? Like, it's really bad, but there's just probably memory leaks in certain areas due to certain things. I don't know. I don't understand the technical aspect of that, but yeah.
But overall, would you say that the bugs are glaring or game-breaking?
There's enough in there to make you wonder. Like, I know it's such a huge game, and I don't expect it to be perfect, you know what I mean? Like, not as much as I would, a single-player proper campaign. I give allowances to that, but is it? I think people have scored it a bit too high, considering it has major faults. Like, it's like everyone's a kid here. It's like, oh my god, it's Fallout 4! Slap a 10 on it, man. Yet negate that these glaring issues should get a point or two taken off them alone. And yes, it does hard crash. The game does crash. Not just when you alt-tab, it does crash. And the whole auto-save system isn't that regular either, so you can lose quite a bit of progress.
I've only had it crash a couple times where it was like I was just clicking on something and all of a sudden the whole game is just gone. And then I've had it happen where during a load screen it was just taking forever to load, and I'm like, okay, it must have locked up.
I've noticed some of them do take quite a few minutes to load sometimes, and I just let them go. Like, I'm not
No, I'm talking
quite
like
patient.
5+ minutes.
Yeah, I'm talking 5+ minutes too sometimes for certain load screens, and it'll just be random. Like one time you go into it, it'll be like a 1 minute load. The next time 5 minutes. Like it's very weird with how it loads sometimes. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. Even with the couple crashes that I've had, it never was that I lost enough progress to be frustrated. Was talking to somebody on Twitter the other day, and they were saying that they had a bug happen, but they were like, it crashed and my save game is gone, and like there was just no more save games at all. Like all of their saves got wiped.
Yeah, I've heard of corrupted ones as well from people.
Yeah, that's either a hell of a bug.
I've heard people having some of those story missions completely glitch out and not being able to update as well. And that requires you to start again if you actually want to complete that.
Right.
Not too bad if it's just a side quest, but if that was a story quest, I'm not sure. But yeah. Like, there are quite a few major bugs to the game. There is.
Yeah, I'm not denying
I knew that going into it. I said, I wasn't going to buy Fallout 4 until, like, a few months later because there's going to be bugs. I know there's going to be bugs. Bethesda always has bugs. So do Fallout games. It's the same engine. Blah, 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 blah. I still bought it. The bugs are there. Yeah.
Same.
So, yeah, I wouldn't give it, like... I would definitely take a few points off because of its buggy nature. But at the same time...
Once they're fixed...
I don't expect a game this large to be perfect. Just like I wouldn't expect Skyrim to be perfect. Like, you've got so many characters, so many missions, so big a world, characters, blah, blah, blah. There's no amount of QA army in the world that would ever be able to find everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And fix everything. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I think I was, like, watching a dev, like, talk about this. He was saying, I could put in 200 hours of QA onto this one project. That is going to be surpassed by far just in the first day of play. You know what I mean? And reports are 12 million sales so far, 500K, like, players all just at one time with Fallout, like, that's a lot of people playing. And
I think
a lot
it got
of
up to like 700,000 actually.
Well, yeah, there you go. There's 700,000 hours just in the first hour, That's a ridiculous amount of people playing your game in ways that you might not have planned for, or just in areas that you might have played through fine, and then they're going to think it, and then you've got all the different hardware components. There's going to be issues. I know there's going to be issues. So I still think your game shouldn't crash,
Yeah.
I still think certain issues shouldn't be there.
Right.
I think pathing should definitely be better. And I just think some certain general polish things should have been noticed and fixed on earlier. But I'm not going to go into a blinding rage about it,
There's nothing here that's game breaking for me. I mean, I've had other games that were fully done, had been patched and fixed and whatever, came out 2 years ago and still crash. So, it is what it is. So how do you think this Fallout compares to older Fallouts? Now, we can't really go back as far as like Fallout 1 and 2 because the game changes ridiculously once you go into that full 3D world. So just limit that to Fallout 3 and New Vegas.
I feel like here they haven't put stress as much on the story. Like, it's there and it's part of it, but it's more about exploring an open world. I like that, but I don't think some others like it. Like, Fallout New Vegas had that really strong story factional system to it, And even just with, what was the guy that owned the casino?
I don't remember his name, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like, that was a strong part that pulled you along that whole story. And this is just, I know the characters themselves don't have as much of a personality or in-depth, interesting story behind them. But I don't think that's a bad thing per se for me. I like just going about a world, and the world is what I want to explore, not the actual story and individuals. So it's not an issue for me, but I can see if you are really, really story-focused, faction-focused, and want to really get in-depth, like, with that lore and characters and all that, I don't think it would be as good as those older ones, but it's still there.
Yeah, I think... See, I only played Fallout 3 for probably like 5 or 6 hours and never finished it. New Vegas I played through the majority of. I didn't finish it either, but I feel like I have a more of a knowledge of that game than number 3. 3, my major complaints were VATS and, just the feeling of not knowing where to go, what to do, and not really being enthralled with the landscape or wanting to go see what's over that hill. It just didn't grab me. New Vegas did a little bit more, but I think that's because of the driving storyline that you just touched on.
It's funny, like 3 in New Vegas, they had that stronger story and characters which brought you along. The world was this washed out grey wasteland. Like, it wasn't that interesting, but it was those different towns and places that kept on moving you along. Here it feels like the opposite. I want to explore this world more than I want to explore the actual people.
For me, I think it strikes a good balance. It's less of a focus on the story, but I still want to know what's going on with all of the different people and stuff. But at the same time, I still want to see what's over that hill. I want to explore that bunker because I know there's going to be something in there cool. And I like the fact that they've added in, like legendary items and stuff like that feel better than just the normal junk you would find everywhere. And then, just making it to where VATS works better. The crafting system is more intuitive. Adding the base building that I didn't even know I was going to like. And just overall, they've fixed all the issues I had with the old games, outside of perhaps just the bugs and not the greatest AI. So, I don't know, for me, it's the best Fallout game yet. And maybe even the best Bethesda game yet.
I haven't got far enough in it to say just yet whether, like, I really got into the whole New Vegas experience. I know that was probably the characters pulling me along more than the actual mechanics behind it, but I really got into it. So I don't know whether this will pull me on as strongly, but I definitely enjoy that as more. It feels like a more rounded game,
That's what I said. I think it feels like it strikes a good balance. So what do you think makes it a good open world game?
Yeah, I think it just doesn't really point stuff out to you. It's like all out there for you to explore kind of thing.
It does point things out to you when you hear about something. It'll put a marker on your map.
But then you have to be the one to interact that first. You know what I mean? Like, you have to either be looking at that console, reading through those log files, and read something in particular, and then it'll put you on your map, or it'll be a certain NPC that you talk to, and you'll say one option, or the radio frequency, and then it'll point something out for you. Like the story missions, yes, it keeps putting you along to where you need to go, but that's just the story. Everything else is kind of there for you to explore.
Yeah, there was one storyline that I came across that, I think encompasses that feel really well, because it wasn't a main story quest, but it did contain members of a particular faction, and it was just, I was randomly walking, and it said that there was this signal, like a distress signal, and so I turned on my radio, and it gives you the little beep, and then as you get closer to wherever the signal's coming from, the beep gets more often and more repetitive. So I eventually find where it's coming from, and there's a dead body of a person from a particular faction, and then they have a little hollow disc on them, and you listen to that, and that kind of gives you the explanation of how they got to where they are and how they died, and then kind of points you in the direction of the next person. And you eventually follow this trail of dead people and hollow discs till you come to the culmination where the very last member of that team is hiding in a bunker, and then gives you, lets you raid their bunker as reward for having answered all their questions or whatever. And just something like that it's so organic. It's not something that's forced on you. I was wandering off. I don't even know what I was working on or what I was doing, but that distress signal came up, and I dropped everything and went for that, and followed an entire quest chain just on a whim. And even though it's a quest chain, mechanically speaking, it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like an organic experience, and I think that's what makes this game great in the open world kind of sphere, because it's just, most of them are just a bunch of quest markers and checkboxes to get off your list, whereas this feels like you never know what's coming next.
It's the whole I'm making my own story as I go thing, it's not all laid out for me. In The Witcher, I had all these little points already on the map, and I was going to those, but here it's the entire map is empty.
Well, and you even said that The Witcher was super well done and one of the best.
I found a lot of stuff on my own. You do have that to explore, but this takes it to another level.
Right.
It gives you nothing, and I think that would be a bit overwhelming to certain people. Actually having nothing there, you just have that story to guide you, nothing else. But I like it.
Me too. Okay, so last question. Would you recommend this game to your friends?
Yes.
Me too. Definitely.
If they like gaming and shit, then yes.
I think what makes this game easy to recommend to people is the fact that it successfully merges multiple genres because of having the first-person shooting mechanics, but then having a deep RPG
that makes it
there.
feel so much better having proper shooting. Oh,
it does.
Why the hell didn't they do this sooner? Like, how bad is their shooting in their other games?
It's horrible, and I don't understand why it always was so horrible, and that was always such a big turnoff for me. Because when I bought Fallout 3, at the same time I bought Borderlands, so you can tell which one I ended up, going with, because Borderlands actually had fun shooting, and it had co-op. And it was like, that's like the only thing that's missing from this that would make it an even stronger recommendation.
Well, one thing I did hear, people are complaining that because the shooting is so good now, they've kind of made it more of an integral part of the gameplay. Like, remember in the older ones where you could just, like, sometimes you'd have that whole conversation battle trying to get the right answer to get the right thing, or certain areas ask you to have charisma or perception to pass the test, or like they put a lot more emphasis on, lockpicking certain areas or console codes to get through a certain area instead of just shooting, you know what I mean? Like, they made it, I guess, more options on how to attack certain problems,
Yeah.
But here, I think the emphasis has been placed more on that combat.
I should agree, but I mean, there's still some conversational options if you have persuasion.
All those, and the consoles and the lockpicking, they're more just to get, I don't know, this type of gear here, you know what I mean? It's not like a different way to go about a quest.
True.
Like before in like Fallout 3 and New Vegas, like certain quest markers, you could actually complete them in different ways. Now it just seems like I have to, that combat's basically the only way. There are exceptions to this, of course, but yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, that could be considered a downfall. For me, I like just killing everything. So
I'm not averse to it either.
it works out. Either way, I give this game glowing reviews. Even with its downfalls, I mean, I wouldn't give it a 10, maybe like an 8, overall, just because of some of the bugs.
I wouldn't recommend it to people just because of the bugs right now still. Like, I definitely went into it knowing that, but I'd still say maybe wait a couple months for them to optimize the game. And they do, like after about 3 months.
Well, and they also have a season pass, so we know there'll be DLC, more chunks of content coming our way.
Yeah.
Check out. So.
That's the other thing I want. Like, in this day and age, why does the loading screens just to get into a building take so long?
I don't know.
It should just be push the door open and walk in. Like, it should load the world. Like a lot of these open world games, they load the world around you. You know what I mean?
It does to a degree, unless it's like you're now entering a dungeon or a whole new like instance. Then it goes into a load screen. But otherwise, like once you're inside the building, you can open up every door without load screens. But
I mean, why does it need a loading screen? Like, I go into like a mole rat hole. It should just be an open hole to walk into, not an instance. You know what I mean? That house is right there that I want to walk into. You don't have to walk into a loading screen. It should have just loaded that whole house to start off with.
I don't think the issues with the technology of being able to load the area. I think it's the issue of being able to control the AI's aggro. Because if you were to walk by that hole, you might aggro.
That doesn't fly either because you've got a lot of open world encounters anyway.
I don't know.
And they've really phased the open world where, you can clear entire areas. If you kill a legendary at one spot, it's not going to respawn. Enemies you've killed in certain areas, that area will stay relatively, even in like on roads and that area will stay generally pretty safe. The enemies are gone there. Some enemies pass around, but they do this. I don't think they needed to do that for the instances. That's my, I don't know, it feels really segmented in points.
I don't know, I haven't really gotten that feeling, but that's a valid complaint, I think.
And that's Fallout 4. Everyone's talking about it, you've heard it, you've seen it. You probably already own it yourself if you're interested, so if you're sitting on the fence, then yeah, I would say pick it up. You won't be disappointed.
That does it for this week's edition of Couch Potatoes. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll continue to join us. Couch Potatoes can be found on Twitter at Couch Potatoes, and on Anook at anook.com/blog/couch-potatoes. Music credits, other places you can find us, and pertinent links discussed on the show can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening. We're going to get back to gaming now, so we'll see you next week.